I never thought a snowstorm would turn into the most expensive legal battle of my life. But when you live in a neighborhood ruled by Barbara Jenkins, the HOA president, nothing surprises you anymore. My name is Andrew Yates, and I have lived in Pinewood Grove, a planned community just outside Minneapolis, Minnesota, for 7 years. The houses are beautiful, the lawns are meticulously maintained, and the homeowners association is run by a woman who believes she is the supreme commander of residential real estate. Barbara Jenkins is 53 years old, drives a white Lexus SUV with a license plate that reads HOA Boss, and has never met a rule she did not want to enforce with the fury of 1,000 suns. It was February, and Minnesota winters are no joke. We had just gotten slammed with 18 inches of snow overnight, and the entire metro area was buried under a thick white blanket. The snowplows had been working around the clock, pushing massive amounts of snow to the sides of every street. In our neighborhood, that meant enormous snow piles formed at the end of every driveway and along the curbs where the plows had done their work. I woke up that morning to find my driveway completely blocked by a wall of compressed snow about 4 feet high. The city plows always did this, pushing the snow right across residential driveways as they cleared the main roads. It was annoying, but it was part of winter life in Minnesota. Everyone dealt with it. You grabbed your shovel, maybe fired up the snowblower, and you cleared it out. No big deal. I bundled up in my heavy coat, pulled on my insulated gloves, and headed outside around 7 in the morning. The air was crisp and cold, probably around 15 degrees, and my breath came out in thick white clouds. My neighbor across the street, David Morton, was already out there attacking his own snow pile with a shovel. "Morning, David," I called out, waving. "Morning, Andrew. Hell of a storm last night, huh?" He leaned on his shovel, catching his breath. "Sure was. Going to take me at least an hour to clear this mess." I fired up my snowblower and got to work. The machine roared to life, chewing through the packed snow and spitting it out onto my front lawn. It was hard, heavy snow, the kind the plow had compressed into an almost concrete-like consistency. Progress was slow but steady. About 45 minutes into my work, I heard a car engine revving aggressively down the street. I looked up to see Barbara's white Lexus coming down Maple Drive, the main street through our neighborhood. The road had been plowed, but there were still patches of ice and compacted snow. She was driving way too fast for the conditions, probably going 30 miles per hour in a residential zone that had a 25-mile-per-hour limit even in good weather. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Barbara approached the intersection of Maple Drive and Oak Lane, where the plows had pushed an especially large pile of snow into the corner, she apparently decided she did not want to slow down or navigate around it. Instead, she jerked her wheel hard to the left, attempting to cut the corner more sharply. Her tires hit a patch of black ice, and suddenly her Lexus was sliding sideways. "Oh no," I muttered, watching the scene unfold. Barbara's SUV spun a full 180 degrees before slamming directly into the massive snow pile on the corner. The impact was not hard enough to deploy the airbags, but it was definitely hard enough to bury the front end of her vehicle deep into the snow. Her headlights disappeared into the white mass, and snow cascaded over her hood and windshield. David had stopped shoveling and was staring at the accident along with me. Several other neighbors had emerged from their homes, drawn by the sound of the crash and the revving engine. Barbara sat in her car for a moment, and I could see her furiously turning the steering wheel and pressing the gas pedal. Her tires spun uselessly, whining against the ice beneath them. She was completely stuck, her front end buried in snow and her rear tires sitting on pure ice. "Should we go help her?" David asked, already starting to walk toward the scene. "Yeah, I guess so," I replied, though I knew from experience that Barbara was not the grateful type. By the time we reached her vehicle, she had climbed out of the driver's side door, her face red with anger. Barbara was a tall woman with bleached blonde hair styled in what I called the "I demand to speak to the manager" cut. She wore designer workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, and her perfectly manicured nails clutched her cell phone like a weapon. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she shouted at no one in particular. "Who is responsible for this snow pile? This is a clear violation of neighborhood safety standards." "Barbara, are you okay?" David asked, his voice full of genuine concern. "That was quite a slide." "Of course I am not okay. Look at my car. Look at this disaster." She gestured wildly at the snow pile as if it had personally attacked her. "Someone put this snow pile here deliberately to obstruct traffic flow." I could not help but speak up. "Barbara, the city plows put that there. They have to push the snow somewhere when they clear the roads. Everyone has piles like this in front of their houses." Her eyes locked onto me with the intensity of a heat-seeking missile. "Andrew Yates, I should have known you would defend this negligence. This pile is on common HOA property at the intersection. Someone should have removed it immediately." "The storm just ended 6 hours ago," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "The plows are still working and everyone is just starting to dig out their own driveways. Nobody has had time to clear the common areas yet." "That is no excuse. As HOA president, I expect immediate action on safety hazards." She was already typing furiously on her phone. "I am documenting everything for the association records." Several more neighbors had gathered around by this point. Margaret Sullivan, an elderly woman who lived next door to me, shook her head. "Barbara, dear, you were driving awfully fast for these conditions. Maybe you should just call a tow truck and get your car pulled out." "I was driving a perfectly reasonable speed," Barbara snapped. "This is not my fault. This is a failure of the homeowners association to maintain safe conditions, and I will be holding someone accountable." I exchanged glances with David, who just shrugged with a "here we go again" expression. Barbara had a long history of threatening legal action over minor inconveniences. Last summer, she had threatened to sue the Robinsons for their wind chimes being too loud. Before that, she had sent certified letters to the Patels demanding they remove their garden gnomes because they were not consistent with neighborhood aesthetics. A tow truck arrived about 30 minutes later, and the driver managed to pull Barbara's Lexus out of the snow pile. There was no visible damage to her vehicle aside from some scratches on the front bumper and a small dent in the hood. She drove off in a huff, leaving the rest of us to finish clearing our own driveways. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I received a certified letter in the mail. The return address showed it was from Wheeler and Associates, a law firm in downtown Minneapolis. My stomach sank as I opened the envelope. The letter informed me that Barbara Jenkins was filing a lawsuit against me personally, along with the Pinewood Grove Homeowners Association, for willful and negligent obstruction of traffic flow resulting in vehicular damage, emotional distress, and physical injury. She claimed that I, as the owner of the property nearest to the intersection, had deliberately created the snow pile to block the road. She was seeking $50,000 in damages. I read the letter 3 times, convinced it had to be some kind of joke. But the legal letterhead was real, the case number was real, and the court date scheduled for 6 weeks from now was definitely real. My wife, Patricia, came home from work that evening to find me sitting at the kitchen table with the letter spread out in front of me. "Andrew, what is wrong? You look like you have seen a ghost." She set down her purse and came over to look at the document. "Barbara is suing me. She is actually suing me over that snow pile she crashed into." Patricia picked up the letter and read through it, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to outright anger. "This is insane. You did not create that snow pile. The city plows did, and it was not even near our property. It was at the intersection." "I know that, and you know that, but apparently Barbara has convinced herself that I somehow orchestrated the whole thing." I rubbed my face with both hands. "I need to call our insurance company and probably get a lawyer." The next week was a nightmare of phone calls and paperwork. Our homeowner's insurance did have liability coverage, but the insurance company was not happy about the claim. They assigned an adjuster to investigate and recommended I hire an attorney to represent me. The HOA was also scrambling because they had been named in the lawsuit as well, and their insurance carrier was getting involved. I hired a lawyer named Richard Goldstein, a sharp middle-aged man with 20 years of experience in civil litigation. We met in his office in downtown Minneapolis, a sleek high-rise with views of the frozen Mississippi River. "Mr. Yates, I have reviewed the complaint, and I have to be honest with you. This is one of the most frivolous lawsuits I have seen in my career," Richard said, tapping his pen on the desk. "However, we still need to take it seriously and prepare a solid defense." "What do I need to do?" I asked. "First, I need you to write down everything that happened that morning. Every detail you remember about the snowstorm, the plowing, and the accident. Second, I need photos of the intersection, the snow piles, and anything else relevant. Third, I am going to subpoena the city records for the snow removal schedule and the plow routes." I spent the next several days gathering evidence. I took dozens of photos of the intersection, showing where the snow piles naturally formed when the plows came through. I got statements from David and Margaret, who had both witnessed Barbara's reckless driving. I even contacted the city public works department and requested the snow plow logs for that morning, which showed exactly which trucks had been on our street and when. Meanwhile, Barbara was not backing down. She sent multiple emails to every homeowner in Pinewood Grove, claiming that she had been viciously attacked by a deliberately constructed snow barrier, and that the HOA had failed in its fundamental duty to protect residents. She called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the snow pile incident and necessary policy changes to prevent future targeted attacks. I attended that meeting along with about 40 other homeowners. It was held in the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. Barbara stood at the front of the room, her arms crossed, looking like a general preparing for battle. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "As you know, I was recently involved in a serious accident caused by negligent snow management. I could have been killed." Someone in the back coughed, and it sounded suspiciously like the word drama. Barbara ignored it and continued. "I am proposing immediate changes to our HOA bylaws. First, any snow accumulation over 12 inches in height on common property must be removed within 4 hours of the snowfall ending. Second, homeowners adjacent to intersections will be held personally responsible for snow removal at those intersections. Third, fines of $500 per day will be assessed for non-compliance." The room erupted in protests. David stood up. "Barbara, that is completely unreasonable. We just had 18 inches of snow. The city had not even finished plowing the main roads 4 hours after it stopped. How are we supposed to clear common property that fast?" "That is not my problem," Barbara shot back. If you want to live in Pinewood Grove, you need to maintain appropriate standards. Margaret raised her hand. Barbara, you were driving too fast for the conditions. I saw it with my own eyes. This was not anyone's fault but your own. That is slander, Margaret, and I would be careful about making such accusations. Barbara's voice was icy. I stood up, my patience finally exhausted. Barbara, you are suing me for something the city did. The plows created that snow pile, not me. I have the city records proving it. This lawsuit is frivolous, and these proposed rule changes are vindictive. You would say that, Andrew, considering you are the defendant. She pointed at me dramatically. I am trying to make this neighborhood safer, and you are obstructing progress. The meeting devolved into chaos after that, with homeowners shouting over each other. Eventually, the HOA board tabled Barbara's proposals for further review, though she made it clear she would keep pushing for changes. As February turned into March, the legal proceedings moved forward. Richard filed our response to the lawsuit, denying all allegations and countering that Barbara's own negligence had caused the accident. We included witness statements, photos, city records, and even weather reports showing that the conditions were hazardous and that Barbara had been driving recklessly. Barbara's lawyer, a slick young guy named Todd Wheeler, filed a motion claiming we were harassing his client and attempting to intimidate her. Richard laughed when he read it. "This is desperation," he told me over the phone. "They know they have a weak case, so they are trying to make you look like the bad guy." The discovery phase began, which meant both sides had to turn over relevant documents and evidence. Barbara submitted photos of her car damage, which amounted to maybe $2,000 worth of repairs. She also submitted a doctor's note claiming she had suffered whiplash and emotional trauma from the accident. Though I knew for a fact she had been at the gym the next day posting selfies on Facebook. Richard subpoenaed Barbara's phone records, which showed she had been texting while driving moments before the crash. He also obtained surveillance footage from a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera that clearly showed Barbara speeding down the street and losing control of her vehicle. "This is gold," Richard said when he showed me the footage. "No jury is going to side with her when they see this." The case was scheduled for trial in late April, but Richard was confident we could get it dismissed through a summary judgment motion. He filed the motion in early April, arguing that no reasonable jury could find me or the HOA liable based on the evidence. The hearing for the motion was held on April 15th in Hennepin County District Court. I sat nervously in the courtroom gallery while Richard presented our case to Judge Patricia Thompson, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had a reputation for not tolerating frivolous litigation. Richard methodically walked through the evidence. The city plow records showing the pile was created by municipal workers, the witness statements describing Barbara's reckless driving, the phone records showing she was texting, and the video footage showing her speeding. "Your Honor," Richard concluded, "this is a clear case of a plaintiff attempting to blame others for her own negligence. Mr. Yates had no control over where the city placed snow piles. He had no duty to remove snow from a public intersection, and the evidence overwhelmingly shows that miss. Jenkins caused this accident through her own careless driving. We respectfully request that you grant summary judgment and dismiss this case with prejudice." Todd Wheeler stood up to argue for Barbara, but he looked uncomfortable. "Your Honor, my client suffered real damages. The snow pile was a hazard, and someone should be held responsible." Judge Thompson peered at him over her glasses. "Mr. Wheeler, are you arguing that residents should be held liable for snow piles created by city plows on public property?" "Well, Your Honor, the HOA has a responsibility to maintain safe conditions. The HOA does not control city snow removal operations, counselor. Do you have any case law to support your position? Todd fumbled through his notes. We are, still researching the specific precedents, Your Honor. I see. Judge Thompson did not look impressed. I am going to take this under advisement, but I have to say, Mr. Wheeler, this appears to be an exceptionally weak case. You might want to advise your client to consider withdrawing the lawsuit. The hearing ended, and Richard was optimistic. That went about as well as we could have hoped. Judge Thompson basically telegraphed that she is going to grant our motion. 2 weeks later, we got the decision. Judge Thompson granted summary judgment in our favor and dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning Barbara could not refile it. In her written order, the judge was even more scathing than she had been in the hearing. The plaintiff has failed to establish any viable legal theory under which the defendants could be held liable, the order read. The evidence clearly shows that the snow pile in question was created by city employees performing routine snow removal operations. The plaintiff has presented no credible evidence that the defendants had any control over or responsibility for the snow pile's placement. Moreover, the evidence strongly suggests that the plaintiff's own negligent driving was the sole cause of the accident. This lawsuit is frivolous and should never have been filed. I was ecstatic when Richard called to tell me the news. We won, I asked, hardly believing it. Complete victory, Richard confirmed. Not only did we win, but the judge's language is harsh enough that we might be able to seek sanctions against Barbara for filing a frivolous lawsuit. What does that mean? It means we can ask the court to order her to pay our legal fees. Given how badly she lost and how critical the judge was, we have a decent shot at it. Richard filed a motion for sanctions the following week. Barbara was livid. She showed up to the next HOA meeting ranting about how the legal system was rigged against her and how I had somehow bribed the judge. Nobody believed her, and several homeowners openly told her she needed to drop the whole thing and move on. The sanctions hearing was scheduled for June 10th. This time, Judge Thompson did not mince words. Miss Jenkins, I have reviewed your lawsuit and the evidence presented, and I find that you filed this action without any reasonable basis in law or fact, the judge said sternly. You attempted to hold your neighbor liable for something completely outside his control, and you wasted this court's time and resources pursuing a meritless claim. I am ordering you to pay Mr. Yates' attorney fees in full, which according to the documentation provided amount to $12,300. Barbara's face went pale. Your Honor, that is outrageous. I was just trying to protect my rights as a homeowner. You were attempting to extort money from your neighbor over an accident you caused yourself, Judge Thompson replied coldly. You are fortunate I am not referring this matter to the state bar for investigation of your attorney's conduct in pursuing such a frivolous case. The sanctions order is final. You have 30 days to pay. Barbara stormed out of the courtroom, and I did not see her for several weeks after that, but the drama was far from over. In July, I received a letter from the HOA board informing me that Barbara had scheduled yet another special meeting to discuss financial mismanagement and the need for leadership changes. I had a sinking feeling about what was coming. At the meeting, Barbara unveiled her newest scheme. She claimed that the HOA's insurance premiums had increased because of the lawsuit, and she blamed me for it. She proposed that I be fined $10,000 to cover the damages to the association caused by my obstruction of snow removal operations. This was too much. David stood up immediately. Barbara, you lost the lawsuit. The judge ruled against you and made you pay Andrew's legal fees. Now you are trying to punish him through the HOA. This is abuse of power. I am exercising my authority as HOA president to protect the financial interests of this community," Barbara replied haughtily. Margaret stood up next. "I move that we hold a vote of no confidence in Barbara Jenkins as HOA president. She has become a liability to this community and needs to be removed from her position." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Barbara looked shocked, as if she could not believe people were actually standing up to her. The vote was held the following week, and it was not even close. Out of 200 homeowners in Pinewood Grove, 173 voted to remove Barbara from her position as HOA president. She was also removed from the board entirely. David Morton was elected as the new president, and he immediately rescinded all of Barbara's proposed snow removal rules and fines. But Barbara was not done yet. In August, she filed a second lawsuit, this time against the HOA itself, claiming she had been wrongfully removed from her position and was entitled to damages for defamation and emotional distress. The HOA's insurance company assigned a lawyer to handle the case, and once again, the legal wheels started turning. This lawsuit was even more ridiculous than the first one. HOA members have every right to vote out their leaders, and there was nothing defamatory about the removal process. This case did not even make it to a motion hearing. The HOA's lawyer sent a strongly worded letter to Barbara's attorney pointing out that the lawsuit was without merit, and that continued frivolous litigation could result in additional sanctions and even criminal charges for harassment. Todd Wheeler, apparently having learned his lesson, withdrew from representing Barbara. She tried to find another lawyer, but no one would take her case. By September, Barbara finally gave up on the legal battles. She put her house on the market and moved out of Pinewood Grove in October. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had relocated to Edna, a wealthy suburb south of Minneapolis, where she was reportedly already having conflicts with her new HOA. The whole ordeal cost me months of stress, thousands of dollars in insurance deductibles, and countless hours dealing with lawyers and paperwork. But in the end, justice prevailed. The frivolous lawsuits were dismissed, Barbara was held accountable for her actions, and she was removed from power. David turned out to be an excellent HOA president. He implemented reasonable policies, treated homeowners with respect, and focused on actual community improvement rather than petty power trips. The snow removal policy was simple. Everyone takes care of their own property, and the association hires a contractor to clear the common areas within a reasonable time frame after major storms. The following winter, we got another massive snowstorm, and once again, the city plows created huge snow piles at every intersection. But this time, nobody crashed into them, nobody filed any lawsuits, and life went on peacefully in Pinewood Grove. I learned some valuable lessons from the whole experience. First, never underestimate the lengths to which an entitled person will go to avoid taking responsibility for their own mistakes. Second, document everything, because you never know when you might need evidence to defend yourself. Third, a good lawyer is worth their weight in gold when you are facing frivolous litigation. Most importantly, I learned that communities are stronger when they stand together against bullies and tyrants. Barbara had ruled Pinewood Grove through fear and intimidation for years, but when she finally went too far, the homeowners united to remove her from power. It restored my faith in the basic fairness of people and the legal system. As I sit here now, writing this account on a cold January evening, I occasionally think about Barbara and wonder if she has learned anything from what happened. Probably not. People like her rarely do. They go through life believing they are always right, and everyone else is always wrong. and they leave a trail of conflict and litigation in their wake. But she is someone else's problem now, and I am just grateful to be living in a peaceful neighborhood with reasonable people and a functional homeowners association. The white Lexus SUV with the HOA boss license plate is gone, replaced by a lovely family with 3 kids who actually smile and wave when you see them on the street. Sometimes in life, the good guys really do win. It just takes patience, determination, and a willingness to stand up for what is right. And maybe, just maybe, a massive snow pile in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to expose a tyrant for who she really is. The legal bills have been paid, the sanctions money has been collected, and the only reminder of the whole mess is a small scratch on the corner signpost where Barbara's Lexus clipped it on her way into the snow pile. The city repainted the sign last fall, so even that mark is gone now. Life in Pinewood Grove has returned to normal, or as normal as life gets in a Minnesota suburb, where winter lasts 6 months, and the snow piles can reach heights that would make a mountaineer nervous. We shovel our driveways, we help our neighbors when they get stuck, and we all share a collective eye roll when the city plow comes through and buries us in again. Patricia and I celebrated our victory with a nice dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Mississippi River. We toasted to good neighbors, competent lawyers, and fair judges. We also toasted to snow piles, which sounds strange, but that snow pile had inadvertently saved our neighborhood from years of continued tyranny under Barbara's rule. You think she will ever apologize? Patricia asked, sipping her wine. Not a chance, I replied. People like Barbara never apologize. In her mind, she is the victim and everyone else is wrong. I feel sorry for her new neighbors, Patricia said. Me too, but maybe they will figure out how to handle her faster than we did. As the months passed, the story of Barbara and the snow pile became legendary in our neighborhood. New residents would hear the tale and laugh in disbelief. Kids would point to the intersection and say, "That is where the crazy HOA lady crashed her car." It became part of the local folklore, a cautionary tale about the dangers of HOA power gone unchecked. David proved to be not just a better president than Barbara, but actually a genuinely good one. He organized neighborhood events that people actually enjoyed, like summer barbecues and holiday light contests. He mediated disputes fairly and always gave people the benefit of the doubt. The HOA's reputation slowly transformed from that of a feared enforcement agency to a helpful community organization. In December, almost a full year after the incident, I received an unexpected piece of mail. It was a Christmas card from Barbara. I opened it cautiously, half expecting it to contain some new legal threat or demand. Instead, it was a generic card with a printed message about peace and goodwill. There was no personal note, no signature beyond her printed name. It felt like the kind of card you send to people you barely know because you feel obligated to maintain some minimal level of social contact. I showed it to Patricia, who just shook her head. "She is still trying to act like she did nothing wrong," Patricia said. "She cannot even write a simple apology." I threw the card in the recycling bin and forgot about it. Barbara Jenkins was part of my past, an unpleasant chapter that had closed. I had more important things to focus on, like making sure my snowblower was properly maintained for the winter ahead. Another major snowstorm hit in mid-January, and once again, our neighborhood was buried under a thick layer of white. The city plows came through right on schedule, pushing their usual massive piles of snow to the sides of the roads. The pile at the corner of Maple Drive and Oak Lane grew to about 5 feet tall, even bigger than the previous year. I was out clearing my driveway when David drove by slowly in his pickup truck, checking on the neighborhood. He stopped and rolled down his window. "Morning, Andrew. How are you holding up?" "Doing fine. Just the usual winter fun," I replied, leaning on my shovel. "I hired a contractor to clear the common areas this afternoon. Should have all the intersections cleaned up by dinner time." "That is great, David. Much better system than we had before." He grinned. "Well, we learned our lesson last year, did we not? Hey, did you hear about Barbara?" My stomach tightened. "What about her?" "Apparently she got kicked off the HOA board in Edna too. My wife heard about it from a friend who lives over there. Something about her trying to fine people for having the wrong shade of white on their house trim." I could not help but laugh. Some people never change. "Nope. But at least she is not our problem anymore. Stay warm, Andrew." David drove off, and I returned to my shoveling with a smile on my face. The sun was shining, the snow was sparkling like diamonds, and my neighborhood was at peace. It had been a long and expensive journey to get here, but it had been worth it. The contractor showed up around 2 in the afternoon with a front-end loader and cleared out all the intersection snow piles in about an hour. No fuss, no drama, no lawsuits. Just a simple, efficient solution to a routine winter problem. That evening, Patricia and I sat by the fireplace with mugs of hot chocolate, watching the news coverage of the snowstorm. The meteorologist was warning about more snow coming later in the week, but I was not worried. We had plenty of supplies, good equipment, and most importantly, a functional HOA that actually worked for the community instead of against it. "You know what I realized," Patricia said, staring into the fire. "We almost moved last year. When Barbara was suing us and making life miserable, we seriously considered just selling the house and getting out of here." "I remember," I said. "I am glad we did not." "Me too. This is our home. We should not have to run away because one terrible person made things difficult." "I am proud of you for standing your ground." "I am proud of all of us," I replied. "The whole neighborhood came together to fix the problem. That is what communities are supposed to do." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle and watching the snow fall gently outside our window. It was one of those perfect winter evenings where everything feels peaceful and right with the world. The following spring, the HOA held elections for board positions, and I actually considered running. Patricia encouraged me, saying I had earned the respect of the community through how I handled the lawsuit situation. In the end, I decided against it. I had no desire to deal with the administrative headaches of running an HOA, and David was doing such a good job that it seemed unnecessary to change leadership. But I did volunteer to serve on the Architectural Review Committee, which evaluates requests for home modifications and improvements. It was a small way to give back to the community and ensure that the committee operated fairly and reasonably. Unlike the arbitrary and capricious way Barbara had run things, my first meeting as a committee member drove home just how much Barbara had abused her power. We reviewed requests for things like adding a deck, installing solar panels, and planting new trees. Under Barbara's regime, these requests would have been subjected to intense scrutiny, nitpicking about minor details, and often arbitrary denials. Under the new committee, we took a common-sense approach. As long as the modification met basic aesthetic standards and did not create genuine problems for neighbors, we approved it. One of the requests we reviewed was from Margaret Sullivan, my elderly neighbor, who wanted to install a wheelchair ramp at her front entrance. Her mobility had been declining, and she needed the ramp to remain independent in her home. Under the old system, Barbara would have likely denied the request because ramps were not aesthetically consistent with the neighborhood character. Our committee approved it unanimously in about 30 seconds. "Thank you so much," Margaret said, tears in her eyes when I told her the news. "I was so worried I would have to fight for this like I have had to fight for everything else over the years." "Those days are over, Margaret," I assured her. "We are here to help residents, not make their lives harder." As summer arrived, Pinewood Grove underwent a noticeable transformation. Flowers bloomed in gardens that had previously been too afraid to deviate from the strictly approved plant list. Kids set up lemonade stands without fear of HOA citations. People actually used their front yards instead of treating them like sterile displays. The neighborhood felt alive in a way it had not in years. You could feel the relief, the sense that people could finally relax and enjoy their homes without constantly looking over their shoulders for the HOA police. I ran into David at the grocery store in July, and he pulled me aside with a big smile on his face. "Andrew, I have to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone. He opened an email and handed it to me. It was from the Minnesota Association of HOA Management, recognizing Pinewood Grove as one of the most improved communities in the state. The email praised our transformation from a complaint-driven enforcement culture to a community-focused service organization. "We won an award for not being terrible," David laughed. "Can you believe it? After living under Barbara's rule for so many years, I will take it," I replied. The award ceremony was held in August at a hotel in downtown Minneapolis. David gave a speech about the importance of reasonable HOA governance and treating residents with respect. He did not mention Barbara by name, but everyone who knew our history understood what he was talking about. I thought about Barbara occasionally, wondering if she ever reflected on what had happened. Did she understand that her downfall was entirely of her own making? Did she realize that if she had just admitted her mistake after the snow pile accident and moved on, none of the subsequent drama would have occurred? Probably not. Self-awareness was never her strong suit. In September, I got a call from Richard Goldstein, my lawyer. I had not heard from him since the case closed, so I was surprised to see his name on my caller ID. "Andrew, I have some news you might find interesting," Richard said. "Barbara Jenkins just got sued." "What? By who?" "By her new HOA in Edna. Apparently, she has been harassing the board members, sending threatening emails, and generally making a nuisance of herself. They got a restraining order against her prohibiting contact with board members except through written correspondence submitted to their management company." "Wow. She really has not learned anything, has she?" "Some people never do," Richard said. "I just thought you would want to know that karma is still working." I thanked him for the call and hung up, shaking my head in amazement. Barbara had gone from suing her neighbors to being sued by her new HOA. The cycle of her own making continued. As fall arrived and the leaves began to change color, I found myself reflecting on the entire experience. What had started as a simple snow pile accident had turned into a year-long legal battle, community upheaval, and ultimately, positive transformation. It was not the path any of us would have chosen, but in the end, it led to a better place. Patricia and I hosted a Halloween party for the neighborhood kids that October. We decorated our yard with jack-o'-lanterns, inflatable ghosts, and string lights. More than 50 kids came through, along with their parents, and everyone had a wonderful time. Barbara would have had a meltdown over the decorations being too elaborate or the noise level or something equally ridiculous. But Barbara was gone, and we were free to enjoy ourselves. As winter approached again, I made sure my snowblower was in perfect working order. I stocked up on ice melt, bought new gloves, and mentally prepared for another Minnesota winter. When the first snow fell in late November, I was ready. The city plows came through and created their usual snow piles, including one at the corner of Maple Drive and Oak Lane. I looked at that pile and smiled, remembering everything that had happened because of a similar pile the previous year. David's contractor cleared it out the next morning, and life went on peacefully. No crashes, no lawsuits, no drama, just a community working together to deal with the challenges of winter. As I write this now, sitting in my home office looking out at the snow-covered landscape, I feel grateful for everything that happened, despite the stress and expense at the time. The experience taught me valuable lessons about standing up for yourself, the importance of community, and the fact that justice does eventually prevail. Barbara Jenkins came into my life like a winter storm, disruptive and unwelcome. But like all storms, she eventually passed, and the sun came out again. The neighborhood she left behind is stronger, kinder, and more functional than it was under her rule. Sometimes I wonder what Barbara is doing now. Is she still fighting with her neighbors? Is she still threatening lawsuits over minor inconveniences? Is she still driving too fast and blaming others when things go wrong? I will probably never know, and honestly, I do not need to. She is part of my past, a chapter that is closed. What matters is the present and the future. Pinewood Grove is thriving under David's leadership. Property values are up because people actually want to live here now. The neighborhood has a waiting list of potential buyers because word has spread about what a great community we have become. All because of a snow pile, a crash, a frivolous lawsuit, and a community that finally said enough is enough. The legal system worked exactly as it should have. The frivolous lawsuit was dismissed, sanctions were imposed, and justice was served. No one went to jail because no actual crimes were committed. Barbara's actions were reckless, selfish, and vindictive, but they did not rise to the level of criminality. She paid a price through legal fees, sanctions, and public humiliation, and she was removed from power by a democratic vote. That is how it should work in a civilized society. Not every conflict needs to end in criminal prosecution. Sometimes, civil remedies and community action are sufficient to resolve problems and restore balance. As winter deepens and the snow continues to fall, I go about my daily routine with a sense of peace I did not have a year ago. I clear my driveway without fear of HOA citations. I wave to my neighbors without wondering if they are secretly plotting against me. I enjoy my home without the constant stress of living under a petty tyrant's rule. The snow piles at the intersections are just snow piles now, nothing more. They are not obstacles deliberately placed to obstruct anyone's path. They are not lawsuit ammunition. They are just the natural consequence of living in Minnesota, where winter is long, snow is abundant, and plows have to put it somewhere. I have told this story to friends and family, and everyone reacts the same way. Initial disbelief, followed by outrage at Barbara's behavior, followed by satisfaction at the outcome. It is a story that reminds people that individuals can make a difference when they stand up against injustice, even on a small scale in a suburban neighborhood. The HOA Karen who crashed into a snow pile and sued for blocking her path on purpose got exactly what she deserved. Not revenge, not cruelty, but simple accountability and consequences for her actions. She lost her lawsuit, paid sanctions, lost her position of power, and was forced to leave the community she had terrorized. And the rest of us, we won our neighborhood back. We learned that unity is stronger than tyranny, that truth prevails over falsehood, and that even the most powerful local dictator can be defeated when good people stand together. That is the real story behind the snow pile. It is not just about a frivolous lawsuit or a HOA Karen getting her comeuppance. It is about a community finding its voice, reclaiming its power, and building something better from the ashes of dysfunction. As I finish writing this account, I hear my snowblower roaring outside. Patricia is clearing our driveway after last night's fresh snowfall, and I am about to go out and help her. We will wave to our neighbors, maybe help someone who is stuck, and generally just be good members of a healthy community. The white Lexus with HOA boss plates is long gone. The lawsuits are resolved. The tyrant has been deposed, and life in Pinewood Grove is exactly what it should be: peaceful, friendly, and free. All thanks to 18 inches of snow, one reckless driver, and a community that finally decided to take a stand. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not in distant capitals or grand courtrooms, but in suburban neighborhoods over snow piles and HOA rules. And sometimes, justice comes not with a dramatic flourish, but with a judge's order, a vote of no confidence, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing you did the right thing. That is my story. That is how I survived the great snow pile lawsuit of 2025 and helped transform my neighborhood from a place of fear into a place of community. I would not change a thing, except maybe I would have started standing up to Barbara years earlier. But better late than never. And now, whenever winter comes and the snow piles grow tall at the intersections, I look at them and smile. Because I know they represent more than just snow. They represent freedom, justice, and the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change. The snow will melt eventually, as it always does. Spring will come, bringing green grass and warm sunshine. But the lessons learned during that winter will last forever, passed down to new residents as they join our community, and hear the legendary tale of the HOA Karen, who crashed into a snow pile and lost everything trying to blame everyone but herself. That is what happens when entitled meets accountability. That is what happens when tyrants meet united communities. That is what happens when frivolous lawsuits meet competent judges. Justice prevails, communities heal, and life goes on. The only thing left behind is a good story and a better neighborhood. I will take that outcome any day of the week, even if it cost me $12,000 in legal fees and months of stress to achieve it. Because some things are worth fighting for, and a peaceful home in a functional community is definitely one of them.